Okay, so continuing with our, reflections and study, of course, in relation to our inner transformation, self-awareness, and inner transformation. And like we said, we are using as basis the Sermon on the Mount, the virtues that were listed by Jesus in the sermon. And we are also making a parallel with the 13 virtues that Benjamin Franklin have established for himself. So we started our studies talking in general about um, this process of improvement, of self-improvement, and the need for inner transformation as being an important tool for us to reach peace, harmony, happiness. And then we started with the first one that would be related to humility as a way of being true to ourselves and accepting uh, what we are and what we needs to be done for us to go through this process. So today is the second topic that we are going to be seeing, uh, related to this statement that we have from Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. We will be talking about acceptance in a diversity and mentioning one of the virtues that Benjamin Franklin lists, that is tranquility. How can we find tranquility? Again, this is an open study, and questions and comments are more than welcome. Actually, they make our whole presentation even better, because then we can address different situations, and also bring other examples that you may have to share. So let's start with the presentation. So, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Jesus indicates simultaneously the compensation that awaits those who suffer and the resignation that leads one to bless suffering as a prelude to healing. You should consider yourselves fortunate to suffer, because your pains in this world are the debt of your past wrongs. And these pains, if borne patiently while you are on earth, will save you from centuries of suffering in the future life. Gospel according to Spiritus, chapter 5, item 12. So here is one of the tricky ones, because of course we don't want to suffer. Of course we don't want to hear that the only way for us, the only path for us of improvement is through suffering, through difficulties. But as we understand that we are just living from a planet with the under the denomination of trials and atonements, to a planet under the denomination of a planet of regeneration, where things are going to improve or are improving already, we we don't want to talk about suffering. We don't want to see suffering. But the thing is, what is actually exactly suffering? We call suffering a lot of things that not necessarily represent pain. We call suffering if it's raining today and I had plans to go to the park. Then I'll say, oh, I'm suffering because I wanted to go to the park, or walk my dog and it's raining. So we are talking about deep experiences, not the trivial facts that we have on life. Even sometimes, we always mention that when children have to go to school, they consider that a kind of suffering. something that they do not want to do. They would prefer to have just leisure time and enjoying themselves and not having to deal with responsibility. So the adversities, the challenges, the experiences that are going to be painful in a way, they are part of our process of growing. But it doesn't mean that when we are going through those experience, those facts in our lives that mean me getting more knowledge, understanding, and getting better in the process, that we will not have support, because support is always present. Spiritual friends is always present. Um, Things that can help us go through this process, like, for instance, having friends, having a faith, having something that will take your mind out of just being focused on the difficulties you may be facing now. All of that are resources that will come to us with a name to alleviate everything that we have to go through. So let's say that, and this is actually true, I used to be, to be a ballerina as well, ages ago. And I love that, but it was really painful all the time, all the classes and the rehearsals and all of that. I mean, but at the end you will say, were you unhappy? No, I was happy because it was what allowed me to learn to do one thing that I love it better. And we have to go through this process. And I mean, if you like the piano or painting, for instance, you just don't go and start playing the piano, even if you are privileged with, the possibility of playing by ear things, but you will have to practice. Your muscles in the hand and needs to be exercised. All those processes require dedication that may be considered to be painful as well. Any questions and comments so far? I cannot hear you, Sally. No, not yet. Is anyone hearing Sally? Worst case scenario, Sally,
Can you hear me now?
oh yes, now I can.
Okay. I think, to me, I don't quite get this, because am I right that if the energy that you are expressing out into the world, if the energy that you are, like the peri-spirit and your essence, is of a higher frequency, then you won't be suffering as much as if it is at a low frequency of sort of a person who's not quite in integrity or the like. So I don't see that you're fortunate to suffer, because actually it's a reflection on, as they say, the debt of your past wrongs. So you actually are holding a frequency of the wrongs that you've done in the past or whatever. So I think it's a long stretch to say that I'm fortunate to suffer it. I'm actually unfortunate that I didn't learn a bit quicker, surely.
Yeah, I mean, that's a way of putting things, and this is the way that we should think for the present and the future, since in the past we were given the choice and we didn't exercise that. It's very much like what is happening to us now. Each time more that we have this awareness, not only because of the natural laws, but even the laws that we have already prevailing in our world, according to each country, we have the laws, right, that we have here. We understand what is right and wrong, what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. And in so many things, we understand that, for instance, how damaging, let's say, some habits that we have may be to our health, and in not eating properly, not sleeping properly, and other things that we can do that can be damaging and affecting. But it's our choice, and we still know, and we say, okay, I'll pay the price. The price may be some illness now, maybe some compromise that we will have for our future bodies. So those are things that we can deal with very well, when we should be doing that in the present. And I always like to remember that in the Gospel according to Spiritism, there is a passage on chapter 5 when talks about blessed are the afflicted, or blessed are those who mourn, as well, because there are some differences in the translations, the several translations that we have. We have one of the items, I don't recall by heart which item is this one, but it talks about previous causes of afflictions and present causes of afflictions. And one of the things that the spirits tell us are that all the afflictions, from all the afflictions that we are now suffering in this incarnation, the majority are referred to things that we are doing now, choices that are we making now, as opposed to be just, the making amends, paying off debts of previous actions. We see, like, for instance, with children, sometimes, they do some naughty things, and then we will say, oh, now you're going to be in timeout. Timeout is suffering. Timeout, but at the same time, that is suffering, because I have to be in that place. I cannot watch TV. I cannot use my cell phone. I cannot play with friends. I cannot this or that. I'm in timeout. Is a time for reflection. Is a time for you to have the opportunity to engrave in your heart, so to say, in your soul, spirit, once and for all, that certain things that you are doing are not in your best interest, and that they provoke reactions that will be harmful, not only to yourself, but to others. So what we are going through in this incarnation is a timeout. Is a timeout that represents suffering, that will lead us to reflect about past actions that we committed, that otherwise, because we are still in a level of involvement, that we are not that much yet learning by ourselves, not necessarily having to go through the aggravation, that only when we feel pain directly, I'm going to be able to relate the pain that I may cause to others. So our goal, and this is why, in terms of the spiritual studies and studies in spiritism, is for us to become each time more aware with that. Spiritism doesn't require us to suffer to evolve, or it shows us that we are not masochists, we are not embracing pain, we are not taking these words of Jesus saying, oh, I'm blessed because I have afflictions, oh, I'm blessed because I'm mourning now. But it's an anticipation of growing, the level of growth of the spirit, because when we are going through that, in the process already of making amends, of accepting the timeouts that we need, it means that we are starting to learn those lessons, and we just need to clean up a little bit our our situations so that we can design from now on a better future for us, where suffering pain will not necessarily be part, but the challenges and the, like we said before, adversities that pertain to, to factors that are not related to us are going to affect us in the same way. But then we are stronger, and it's not the same kind of pain that we are talking about. I don't know if I touch it well,
Yeah.
Sally.
Yes, because I was thinking you were saying, blessed are they that mourn. And I'm like, no, it's a
No.
reflection on,
No, the blessing here, this is why it is so hard. And can you imagine, Jesus telling that to people, people meaning us, right? 2,000 years ago, even more unenlightened than we are today, and saying, what are you talking about? If this is the price that I have to pay, that is the reason why it was so hard for people to accept even Jesus Christianity, because I said, I don't want to wind up in the cross myself, and on top of that, being accused of being a revolutionary. My reputation completely stained. Is not only physical pain, but my self-love completely affected, because now I'm a criminal, I'm a revolutionary, I'm all those things that they make a statement, even when putting Jesus to be crucified along two criminals, right, two thieves, saying that he was a thief of peace, a thief of robbing people of the true values. So this is not at all what Jesus was saying here, but the realization, the pain, the anguish that we already feel for others. For instance, there are people that prefer to hide themselves from everything negative that is happening in the world, living in their own island, to make believe that everything is okay. The more we grow, very much like children, it comes a time that they will understand what goes on in the world. They will understand the pain, the happiness, everything that goes around. When we are in that phase that for us it doesn't matter, I don't even get me involved in those things. Oh, I don't like to watch those things, like they don't exist. It means that we are very much in the infancy of this process of growth. So when it comes to the time that I say, you know what, I look at myself like I'm assessing myself, and I say there is one thing that I did in my previous lives that it weighs on my conscience, and I have to find a way to compensate for that. What can I do? How can I not feel guilty about this any longer? And then an alternative is going to be offered to you. Let's say that you were a person, father or mother, that was very careless with children and with your children at the time. And now you realize, and this is what weighs on you. Then they say, okay, so now next incarnation, you're not going to be able to have um, biological children, but you will be given the opportunity to help in any a kind of work to help orphans, for instance. And And this is painful. This is hard because you will go through a process of not having children yourself. You will go through a process of having to dedicate it and to deal with how come I don't have children and there are so many children that were abandoned, with this dichotomy of all of this and giving yourself. So it's more in the sense that meaning. um and coaching here, one other phrase that we have on the Gospel according to Spirit is from the Spirit Joanne of Angelis, where she says that pain is the blessing that God's give to his chosen ones. Exactly in this sense, when we do understand, we do accept, not meaning I want that, bring it to me. The more I suffer, the better I am. No, this is not what we're talking about. But just as a consequence of our actions and as a result of having chosen experiences that can be harder, but because I'm aiming something more, this is the kind of blessing that Jesus is talking about here. And again, never ever saying, "Send me more suffering." This is it would be the similar to say that we are insane. We have enough already. Okay. Anyone else would like to make or even Sally, if you wanted as well, make any comment? Yes, Sonia.
Yes. And resignation doesn't mean you are not feel the pain and all suffering the situation come to you. But resignation is an opportunity to us to think about our actions and then turn in other resolutions in our life. And it's time to reinforce our faith in God.
Yes. You see, again, in a very simple example, you're invited to a dinner, everything is delicious, you eat 2 times, 3 times more than you have, you should. It was your choice. You know that normally you don't eat that much. Normally you are not used to that kind of food. So next day you're feeling horrible because you ate too much. Who's to blame? So here we cannot say, oh, the one that invited me to dinner is to be blamed for. No, you had a choice and we suffer the consequences. So, and once we do that, next time you're invited to a dinner, perhaps you're not going to repeat twice, but just once. It still may be a lot, but it's not going to be as bad. Said, oh, okay, I still have to do more. You see, so it's more or less like that. We still are very indisciplined. We don't have discipline enough. And so the resignation, like Sonia mentions here, is like, what happens the next day? Well, the only thing I can do is accept, resign that it was my choice, that I brought this to myself. And maybe even people there were saying, oh my God, you're going to repeat again, this can be too much. And you didn't hear. You exercised your free will just to satisfy your immediate needs without thinking about the consequences. So this is when we are talking in terms of acceptance here on, of course, on a different set of values, when we are going through some challenges or pain in our lives, that we will say, I may not understand quite well what led me to be in the situation, because I cannot see that in this incarnation, but for sure it comes from a different experience that I had someplace else, some life ago, and then is when these are the blessed, but in the sense I understand. It's not that I like it, it's not that I want more to happen, but I understand. And on top of all of this, the more I understand, the more my energy is going to be different, and the more I will be able to connect with those that can be next to me to comfort me, saying, be patient. It's just a little longer, and it's going to go away or to be reduced, or even a process that you are going to accept. Let's say we have a chronic disease and that will prevent you to play sports, or and you say, oh my god, I like so much to exercise, to play sports, but there is something in my physical body now that prevents me to do that, or can be aggravated if I do that. Okay, I'm going to not consider this to be the end of the world. I'm going to be moved to look for different things that can be fulfilling as well. And I'm going to understand that there is a reason for that. And this reason is always related to something that is going to be playing in my favor, is always with a name to help me. Question, comments? Yes, Marlene?
Um, I, I always felt that I was born in the wrong family, and I couldn't identify with my parents, cousins, nephews, nieces, uncles. There wasn't anybody that I felt akin to or connected to. And that's a form of suffering. And when I was 60, I finally met my real family. And they were a beautiful family, a Mexican family. And I immediately just knew I was there with the people that I was meant to be with. So I always thought it was kind of interesting how destiny works. You get to where you need to go sooner or later.
Mhm. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Marlene, this example, this, your life experience, because, it's hard for us to know why this happened. Because, like I say, unfortunately or fortunately, because the array of options, there are so many, why those things happen. We cannot just say one thing, but let's say, for instance, use even the example that I use it as an example. I'm not saying that this is what happened to you. We had a loving family in other incarnations, and all of a sudden, we are not the ones that value our family any longer. And when it comes a time for us to be reborn, we may not, we will be reborn in a family that has nothing to do with us, and we will feel and value more what a family truly is. Or sometimes, um, uh, because of we need to grow in some values, and that group of people need to grow in some values. They bring different people to that same circle so they can introduce a new dynamic, because they the way you felt probably is the way some of them at least may felt as well, you know She is our blood, but not necessarily our spirit, right? Why does she have to be so different? So they had to learn how to move about the situation. The thing is, having studying so much and all the time talking so much about reincarnation and understanding that how elaborate a plan to reincarnation is before this occur, we can never say that we got in the wrong family. Maybe it's not the family that we wish it for. Maybe it's not a family that we have, keen spirits there, but it's exactly the family that was chosen for a purpose that in this lifetime could help you to grow, because the purpose is always that for each and every one of us. Then this is a simple answer. The purpose is for us to grow through experiences, challenges, adversities, family life, profession, all of that. But yeah, I understand completely. And I think that in your case, that you had this blessing of meeting your spiritual life, even if later on, it shows merit on your part, you see. They said, at some point we will already introduce her, meaning uh, this group of spirits, this king spirits, that she will feel really a sense of pertaining, right, which is sometimes so hard. Yes.
Well, the interesting thing is that I immediately bonded with the mother. And she told me that she had lost a little daughter, her little Naneka, little dog, and that somehow she felt that connection with me. And so I knew she really was my real spiritual mother. And I could feel her love. And she did so many nice things for me. Her generosity was beyond belief. She really didn't, she wasn't wealthy. She didn't have a lot of money. But I had to go back east one year, and she gave me, it makes me want to cry. She gave me $150 to help me. And that's just the kind of person she was. Just a beautiful person. She's gone now. But I love her. I will always love her.
And you say, Marlene, again, thank you for sharing that with us, because this is what we have to understand. You see, how much more we are than our physical bodies, right? The connection, the spiritual connection that we will have with people, that we will immediately recognize, regardless of, like you said, social status or nationality, ethnicity, anything, right? Or sometimes even age, because I may meet now people that are younger than myself, and somehow I will feel them like being my real children, or my real parents in a way, or the family, people that will bring uh, this broader understanding of life, and where I'm going to feel emotionally connected, spiritually connected. And I think one of the reasons why, this mixing happens sometimes as well, is to prove to us as a whole that first of all, we are one single family. We are all children of God, but there are people that have been part of our history, longer, and there are people that because of their inclinations and that because of our inclinations, that we will feel more at ease with than with our blood relatives. And sometimes it's so interesting because it doesn't matter if you see them once a year, twice every 2 or 3 years. The feeling, the emotion that you feel when you are united again, it's the same as if time has stopped, right? So it's really, really beautiful. Oh, let me continue a little bit more in terms of acceptance. Acceptance usually refers to cases where a person experiences a situation or condition, often a negative or uncomfortable situation, without attempting to change it, protest against it, or escape from it. Religions and psychological treatments often suggest the path of acceptance when a situation is both disliked and unchangeable, or when change may be possible only at a great cost or risk. So when in everything that we were talking about, acceptance is a key factor in this process of understanding, and in this process of opening our minds and realizing that it's our responsibility. Everything that happens to us is our responsibility, not necessarily with an aim to punish us. Let's use the example that Marlene brought about again. We may say, oh, was she placed in that family because she needed to be punished or to value family life or this or that? Not necessarily. She may have been put there because she had something very positive to bring to that family that needed a person, a sacrificial situation where someone would say, no, although it's going to be hard because I'm going to be separated from, the spirits that I feel more love and relation with, a stronger relation with, but I will do that. I will help those spirits, those family members to conquer something. And it's thanks to that we have, all the great minds, the great hearts that happen and is still happen in humanity today, that they accept those missions, to come and to help us to conquer new levels of progress, not only material progress, but spiritual progress as well. So acceptance, notions of acceptance are prominent in many faiths and meditation practices. For example, Buddhism, first noble truth, all life is suffering, invites people to accept that suffering is a natural part of life. The term Kabbalah means literally acceptance. Acceptance is the fifth stage of the Kubler-Ross model, commonly known as the stages of dying, of grieving. We are going to be talking about this Elizabeth Kubler-Ross later, so we will go there. So we cannot say that this, first of all, the truth is everywhere. We may get to there through different ways, but everything will lead to that. So when we are talking about the situation, the human situation that we find ourselves with in this planet, we will see that other faiths, philosophies also bring the same concepts in terms of understanding that there is suffering, that there is pain, and that there is the need for acceptance in order for us to overcome all of this. Questions, comments? Yes, okay. Marley first, and then Sonia.
I've read many of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's books, and they're all wonderful. And I highly recommend them. That's it.
I mean, that was a missionary. I mean, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was a missionary. Everything that she brought, and actually the way that she dealt with death and grieving and helping others to go through this process is what nowadays we see so many people dedicating to this as well, to work work in hospices as well, to accept, to better or to make it comfortable the life of those that are on the verge of departing from this world, and the doulas that we have, to death doulas that we have today. Everything comes from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and I mean, yeah, she's an incredible spirit. Sonia.
It's acceptance. Not means you cross your arms and be stuck in the life. But acceptance means you know it's nothing, anything you can do. And then you take another path in different way. I think it is important because many times I can say, oh, I don't need to do anything because I cannot change things. And it's not true. It's not in this way accepted, meaning here. But again, as opportunity to change your option, your path in another way.
And that's wonderful that you said, Sonia, because this is very important for us to emphasize here. It's not like you said, crossing our arms and saying, "Oh, it's God's will. It's Allah's will, or Jehovah's will." No, it means we are going to fight. We are going to find to look for ways, because sometimes the process is exactly this one, is you are faced with adversity and you have to go through that. So the task is exactly that, not just simply accepting. But there always comes a point that there will be, and that comes also, we are going to mention later, the prayer of serenity, right? Acceptance to understand that there are things that I cannot change. For instance, we are all very uncomfortable and sad and affected with the war that is happening now. I mean, among so many others, but this one specifically, but is there anything that I can do to just make it stop? No, I can, send my loving thoughts, my prayers, vibrations to see if others that have the control to stop it will finally, make a move in this sense. But there are things that I cannot change, and so these are the sort of acceptance that is always going to be part of our lives as well. But there are things that, the doctor tells you, your heart is not good. But you see, you're overweight. If you lose weight, the condition of your heart may improve a lot. So now I can't just say, oh, my heart is bad. I mean, going into a diet is too much, and just say, oh, it's part of life. I'll have to die anyway. If it's 5 years or 10 years, who cares, or something. Or you will say, there is something I can do to improve. There is something that I can do to extend my life expectancy and move, like you said, and do something about. So this is not the kind of acceptance that we are talking about here. If there is an alternative for things to get better, you always going to go after an alternative. But you will always have to know when to stop, when to recognize that you tried everything, that you did everything you could, and now I just have to live with that, to accept that this is part of life, or my life, and this is the difference. Thank you so much, Sonia, for bringing that to us. Let me see if we will just see this one before we go. We stop today. Many believe that acceptance means giving up or being passive. Accepting is letting go of the struggle mentality around something. Judo teaches that when someone pulls us towards them, we should move in their direction instead of resisting or pulling away. Acceptance, likewise, involves going with the flow, using the energy present in a situation, regardless of how adverse it may seem, as a partner in our healing process. And this tale, the fable that from Aesop is very interesting for us to illustrate that. The oak and the reeds. A very large oak tree was uprooted by the wind and thrown across a stream. It fell among some reeds, which it does address it. I wonder how you, who are so light and weak, are not entirely crushed by those strong winds. And they replied, you fight and contend with the wind, and consequently you are destroyed, while we, on the contrary, bend before the least breath of air, and therefore remain unbroken and escape. I think this is it is beautiful the way it is. Sometimes we fight so hard with life, and we feel destroyed. Okay, we are uprooted from what we so strongly are attached to. And sometimes, like they say, this is what is acceptance. I just bend to the inevitable. And it is going to be painful. It's going to be hard while I'm in that whirlwind of life. Yes. But then it will go over, and I'm going to recover, and I'm going to move ahead and continue. So when we experience storms, we can either respond as the oak tree, fighting and contending and begging God to remove it from our life, or we can bend and sway as the reeds do, allowing God to carry us through the wind, and broken and ultimately stronger in the end. Whether we want to put God or not in the equation here is allowing life, allowing what it has to happen to take its place, and then we move on and continue. So I'm going to stop for today here, but we still have time for more comments or questions if you wanted to, if you have something you would like to add or to ask. No? Okay, so next week we will continue the same lesson. Okay, normally they take 2-3 weeks each of them for us to cover everything, and which is good, because here is, you know, we are not in a hurry. We just wanted to do it right, to understand, and the first step to do that is to understand it right. Like, you know, it's very good, the contribution that Sally brought to today, because we cannot have the impression that we are blessing and saying, come to me. No, please go away. This is not what I want, but I accept that from the past, I cannot, well, what comes from the past, I cannot change now, but what is happening today and tomorrow is completely my responsibility, right? Okay.
Thank you for your insight.
Sally, you're up. Yes, Sally, go ahead. No, it's still muted. It's still muted. Let's, uh, I don't know if I managed to.
Is that
Yes,
okay?
yes.
Can you hear me now? So that when one says that one's must be accepting and there's nothing one can do, you know, just bend and let it pass because it's either from one's current actions or past actions.
Mhm.
But actually, in a previous lesson, what one spoke about was the raising of the frequency in that moment. So as opposed to being passively accepting of it, I don't think I actually agree with that, because by adjusting to actually raise one's thoughts to, so being passive and accepting is actually still acknowledging this is happening. And I'm not saying deny what's happening, but shift one's focus away from what is happening to something which is of a higher for want of a better word, frequency or focus. So if one then, rather than just being accepting, actually is proactive and says, actually, I'm not going to focus on what's happening now. It is unfortunate and I'm not going to let it worry me, but I will actively take my mind to something which is more aligned with the way that I now understand my is advantageous for me, and therefore to actually shift my focus, to actively shift my focus, not passively accept, but actively change my thoughts and my response, even if that means moving away from what's happening mentally and going to more harmonious thought patterns so as to counter or dilute the effect of what's happening. Would you agree or not?
Let me again tell you all those things. There are so much for us to consider in them. You know, I mean, the main thing is, like we said before, we are not talking here about saying we embrace, we want suffering.
No.
We are not talking here about accepting as, you know, a
Yes.
lamb ready to go to sacrifice without fighting, etc. It came, while you were talking, an example came to my mind. You know, when you lose your keys, right? And you go crazy, you know, trying to look for those keys, and you look at all over and you cannot find it. It comes to a point that you say, oh my God, I'll have to look for the spare or do something else or whatever, you know, and then you move your mind away from it. And all of a sudden you're doing something else. And what happens? You find your keys. So sometimes it's just a matter of shifting the energy as well, the frequency, like you say. Sometimes this acceptance, that doesn't mean, like Sonia mentioned, us just closing our crossing our arms and saying, there is nothing I can do. It is what it is, you know, all those things that we normally say. It means that sometimes by realizing that at that present moment, because it doesn't even mean to say that by me accepting something today, I will not change my mind tomorrow, or new things, new factors are going to arise that will send me in a different path, seeing things from a different perspective. So it means today I say there is nothing else I can do. Like, you know, when you gave up looking for the keys, you said, I look at all over the house. It's not there. It's not where it should be. It's not anywhere. And then you shift your mind. So when we do that in terms of acceptance, and that even change the frequency of I'm mad, I'm I'm revolting against it. How come I always put my kids in the right place, or or someone else did, or when we blame others, all those things. When we shift our energy in terms of, well, for the moment, there is nothing I can do. I just have to accept the situation. We calm ourselves down. We change our frequency, our energy, and then is when those whispering, oh, but I forgot to look at the, at that purse. I think I was wearing that purse yesterday. And you go there and you find it. That's when, you will be comforted, you will be helped, or you will see things with in a different perspective, with a different clarity. But you are absolutely right in this interpretation, that if we were say, um, you will just cross your arms, never, we will never do that, because I may do it temporarily, accepting that for the moment there is nothing I can do, even in this lifetime. But in the next one, okay, now remember that I can do now, that I can deal with now, and I will deal with that. So acceptance in this way, that it never happens.
It's so funny that you use the key thing, because whenever I lose something, in fact, that was a great example to use, because the moment I start to begin to think that something's lost, then I always just shift my mind to nothing's ever lost in the mind of God, because God knows where. Oh, I can't find it. And then I just think, oh, don't look like that. Nothing's ever lost in the mind of God, so it's okay. And then it's not lost anymore. And then I can usually find it, because, so that's exactly what I was referring to, is none of it is a passive process, because actually, even though that might have been a past experience that has brought the challenge at this particular time, nothing's a past experience, because our response to it is in this moment. And therefore, when we respond in this moment, not passively, but with the knowledge that we already have, and therefore with a more correct response, emotionally and mentally, then things can correct.
Exactly.
Not in compensation, but in just holding the right thought for the response that has been triggered in us, and just shifting that emotional response.
And it's important when you say, in a way, if I understood correctly, nothing is past. The action was the past, but is who I am in the present. I mean, everything that happened is what I bring with me now.
Exactly.
I mean, I
Yeah.
cannot change the action, but everything, all the emotions that action provoked, and the results, and following up the consequences and assessment of all that, is here with me now. And this here with me now is what sometimes even bring about those,
Well, it's everything is
anguish, melancholy. Yes, go ahead.
No, that's everything that's happening now is happening because I'm holding that energy in me now as a result of the past, or the thoughts of the past, or whatever. So actually the responsibility for right action is actually in this now current moment, because one moment ago, I wasn't in the right frame of mind. Otherwise, it wouldn't have manifested in that way to me now. It only manifests because I'm holding that energy right that second ago. So therefore, now this new second, I have the potential of shifting that energy to a more balanced point of view, in which case that would automatically nullify it. It would automatically neutralize it, because if my energy shifts to be a different energy from what it was the moment before, then the outcome is not the same.
And you see, when we think thoroughly, and we are going to be doing that in the following weeks when we will continue talking about this subject, acceptance is the first step to action, because acceptance here, because we are not talking about a passive acceptance, is what can I do? Is the next step is what can I do to prevent this to reoccur, or to better my situation, or to eliminate completely the situation from my life. So now I accept that, like, I lost the keys. I lost the keys. I look at all over. So, okay, I have to accept that. What is the next step? I'm never more going to get into my home or drive my car or whatever the keys were for. Or now, I mean, after, and then Elizabeth Kubler-Ross cycle of grief comes also, and we will be seeing that when I say, well, now I have to do something about it, right? And so you continue.
Could we replace the word acceptance with recognition? Because it's to recognize, it's only to recognize it. It's not actually to accept it, it's to recognize it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Recognize sits better with me, because if I recognize, oh, I'm feeling like I've lost the keys, it's only the recognition, then I can bring in, okay, nothing's lost in the mind of God. And so therefore I can relax about it. But if I'm accepting it, then I'm saying, okay, the keys are lost. Now I must start to do something about it.
Yeah, I think they will be, like
Yes,
synonyms,
interchangeable.
but depending on how we are addressing and the situation we are, one may be more appropriate than others. Sonia, you were going to say something?
Yes, it's a sentence. It's like a prayer. Grant me to serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah, that's the prayer of serenity that we will actually be analyzing. Thank you for bringing that as well, Sonia, because this is it's from I think a pastor that
Francis, isn't it? St. Francis of Assisi.
No. This is from I can look and tell you. Let me just give me a minute.
I thought it's the prayer of St. Francis.
No. It is not. Just a second here, please, and I will tell you through whom is attributed this prayer. I'm going even to, sorry.
Yes, says Reinhold Niebuhr.
Yes, it's called Paul Niebuhr. An American theologian that died in 1971. Father, give us courage to change what must be altered, serenity to accept what cannot be helped, and the insight to know the one from the other. It's this call Paul Reinhold Niebuhr. But we will see that. I have in my presentation, we will see that again, but I was thinking about it today as well, since we were talking about all this. So now we continue next week with the same topic. So if you come about with new thoughts, take note and bring it or examples.